two questions are kind of the same, one from Johnny Brewer and one from Perry Reed. I'll just go through these, and I think you can kind of ferret out the best way to answer this. What equipment do you use? How does that change with different playing situations? How do you improve clarity of articulation? And then the other question from the other gentleman was, do you advise playing C trumpet even on B-flat parts? Or in other words, C, E-flat, and D trumpets only? So kind of an equipment question, and how does that change with different situations?
Sure. I play, right now I'm kind of all over the place with different instruments, but this week with the Orchestra of America, I'm playing a Bach B-flat that was made at the Elkhart factory back in the early 90s, I think. And in the orchestra in Boston, I also play an Elkhart Bach that's got a kind of personal lead pipe that Steve Shires made for me. We're constantly kind of experimenting with different equipment, trying to figure out what exactly is the best sound for a given moment. But we more often than not play C trumpet. We very rarely ever play B-flat trumpet in the orchestra. So the C trumpet provides just a little bit more brilliant of a sound, one that's able to project through the winds and through the strings.
And that, I'm sorry, would that be for the pops as well?
For the pops, we certainly tend to play a little bit more B-flat, especially on any big band type stuff that we play. And I'm usually playing all the lead parts when we play big band stuff in the pops, so I certainly play all that on B-flat trumpet. Okay. As hilarious as it would be to play C trumpet in a big band, but and then on almost all German repertoire. And Viennese repertoire, we play rotary trumpets, play Chagrels, and I'd say that's the only consistent hardline tradition that we maintain. Is we always play rotary trumpet on Beethoven, Schumann, Schubert, Bruckner, and particularly exciting challenge coming up is we're playing Mahler 6 with our music director, and he's requested that we play that on rotary trumpet. Which should be. Yeah. I mean, that piece is hard enough as it is, and to have to kind of maneuver through that instrument the way that we're used to doing for late classical, early romantic works.
For Brahms or something like that.
For something that was written close to the turn of the 20th century. No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, but it's a sound we're really looking forward to for that piece in particular because it is the depth of emotion in that piece is so unique. But beyond that, we usually, if it's a part in B flat or C or D or E flat, unless it's particularly high or written with a smaller trumpet in mind, we'll always play C trumpet.
Okay. This is a great question. What do you do to recover? This is from Kim Summer. What do you do to recover between demanding performances that are a day or even hours apart, aside, of course, from using the tons of ChopSaver?
Aside from rigorously applying ChopSaver, not even rigorously because it works so well. Just one layer and I'm good to go. In terms of the playing I do, physical exercises to kind of reduce the swelling because that's what we're all looking to avoid, right? Just like any athlete who has to do multiple workouts or play 2 games in a day, they want to reduce the trauma on their body as much as possible. So. In between, in December particularly, we have a very demanding holiday pop schedule where we play 2 shows a day during the week and 3 shows a day on Saturdays and Sundays, and they're all out, just half big band, half light classical, Arthur Fiedler style pops programming, and it's really hard on the face. You get to the intermission of the 3rd show on a Saturday and you're wondering how you're going to get through the second half of that last show. And so the Saxa book to me is particularly useful. And there are tons of, it's one that I go to, especially on days like today where we had a very good rehearsal of the Artunian this morning, and we had rehearsal last night. So the turnaround was a little quicker than was ideal, but at the same time that's what the situation demanded. So after the rehearsal today, I was playing some soft, low, long tones, but also some articulate, relatively rhythmic excerpts from etudes that are some of my favorites from the Saxa book, from his book of 100 etudes. So I find soft, long tones are great. and soft, moderately fast articulation, nothing multiple-tongued, certainly single-tongued. But I find that it really focuses things down, reduces the swelling a little bit, and I'm not ashamed to say I'm a big fan of aspirin.
From Raquel Rodriguez, what do you recommend college students do for transposition study?
The Bordoni Lyrical Etudes, and I believe he has a transposition book as well. And also the Saxa book again. Every etude in the Saxa book offers you possibilities of 4 or 5 different transpositions. I think with an understanding that you would be playing them on B-flat trumpet, so you never see in B-flat, you see it always transposing from that. But that was one thing that Charlie and Barbara at Northwestern were vigorously dedicated to, was preparing us for every key. So I remember bringing in a list of 5 or 6 etudes to a lesson with Charlie as a freshman. As an 18-year-old, 3 months removed from high school, he'd have 5 etudes on there, and one of them was on B-flat and B-flat, and the rest were up a whole step, up a third, up a tritone, down a major third, so that you, not necessarily because you're going to see a whole bunch of trumpet that's in F sharp, if ever, but just to turn your brain onto that so that you learn how key relationships work, and you find the patterns that are kind of most repeated. So when you get in those situations that you have to sight read something, which invariably, inevitably in your life is going to happen, you have to sit down and you have to play something you've never played before, and it comes down to whether or not you're going to get hired again. It doesn't matter what the transposition is; they want it to be good right then. So, I would say, Bordoni and Saxa, and honestly, the simplest thing I found when I was first starting out with transposition was going through the Arbin's book, and he's got all of his scale drills. And I would look at a scale in C, and I would play it in D, and I would play it in E flat, and I would play it in F. And it seems simple, but once you again are training yourself to look for those relationships and those patterns, and you remember that even though you're transposing, what you're playing is in a completely and totally reasonable key, even though it might be F sharp or A flat minor or something. That's still, those are still notes that exist on the instrument, so it shouldn't be unattainable. So I say I'll start simply. Don't just pick up a Schoenberg part in F and start reading that. But certainly work your way up, and remember that all the notes exist, so they should all be played.
I like that. One final question from my Facebook friends, and then it's about students. And I'm going to let you guys think of some questions, and then the next question after this will come from one of you or a couple of you guys. What common problems do you find with students?
I would say in my relatively limited experience in teaching privately at New England Conservatory and Boston University, compared to my colleagues Ben Wright and Tom Rolfs, who've been doing it for years now. I think the most, I don't want to call it a fault, but I think most consistently what I see from students is, I'll call it, a lack of a commitment to having a sound in their mind that they want to come out of their bell. And at that level, when we get students at New England Conservatory or Boston University, they're like these guys. They're tremendous players, tremendous talents that were the top players in their program in All-State and Youth Orchestra and all of that. So they're fabulous musicians and wonderful players. But somewhere along the way, I think the most consistent thing I've noticed is that concept of sound. The reason we all started playing a brass instrument to begin with, whether it's trumpet or tuba or horn or trombone, you started playing that instrument when you were younger, almost all of us, because of the sound. I heard that trumpet solo in Jurassic Park, and I was 8 years old. I was like, I have no idea what that is, but I want to do it. And then I was like, oh, my brother does it, and then, and so I had these two great things to draw from. But it was always, every time I played a note, my first day in 6th grade, I was so frustrated because I couldn't make that sound. And it drove me mad, and that's what drives you to practice. So whether it's Phil Smith or Chris Martin or Mike Sachs or Tom Hooten or Tom Rolfs or anyone, if they have, once you find that sound that just like moves you emotionally and makes you want to get up at 7 in the morning every day and play your boring long tones, that's what you have to keep forefront always, and that drives your articulation, your flexibility, your dynamic work, everything. Your the low register, the high register, because you have to. If you make any other sound than what's in your head, it drives you up insane. It drives you up the wall. So I'd say that kind of almost maniacal persistence and insistence on what's coming out of the bell. I'd say that's what I really want to see kind of the next generation of players focus on.
And does that sort of connect to that magic thing that happens in an audition when you've found someone who's not trying to sound like somebody else, but they've found their own sound?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that kind of where that all comes together?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jim Markey's a tremendous example of that, because Jim started he came to us from the New York Philharmonic as the bass trombonist. But before he was bass trombonist at the New York Philharmonic, he was associate principal tenor trombone.
Wow. And
before that, he was principal trombone in Pittsburgh Symphony. So, that's a guy who, in terms of sound, from the time he left school at Juilliard to when he went to Pittsburgh, and then when he went to New York, and then decided, I'm not going to play tenor trombone anymore, I'm going to play bass trombone.
Right.
That guy, that's a sound and I can't speak from personal experience, but I would imagine that sound has changed and matured over the years. But at its core, what Jim hears in his head is still what's going to come out of the bell. And that obviously comes from the hours upon hours of practice and dedication to fundamentals, but that never leaves. And I think there's a small handful of players in our country that every single time you hear them, they have that characteristic sound. He's one of them. I mean, I could name several, but Tom Rolfe's in our section, my brother, Mick Mulcahy in Chicago, Mark Inouye in San Francisco, Tom Hooten, Nitzan Hirotz in Philadelphia, trombone. Every time you hear them, you're just like, oh yeah, I know.
Right.
Blindfold me, I know exactly who
the
that
signature
is. And I think that's what distinguishes not just the good from the great, but the great from the greatest. So.